Welcome, Tahira and David, 12 cubed, great conversations about Valuegraphics and the magic that they bring. Let's go.
Let's do it. Episode number 2.
Episode 2 of 12. Here we go. So we've started to talk about Valuegraphics and what that data means and where it comes from. And wow, we're just in a time that is so, let's use all those words. It's unprecedented as we pivot to new thinking and look at what our where we're going to go, and that's right. And we're here, same storm, different boats, all of those things. All of that is true. Nobody. Yesterday was my birthday, and it was one of my very good friends' anniversaries, and it was we said we could possibly have imagined however many years ago that you would be saying, and here I am in the midst of a pandemic, and life is completely different than it was sometimes, and sometimes it feels perfectly normal. We're sitting at home and having a coffee. It feels like everything is okay. Then you go outside and everyone has masks on, and half of the people that don't have jobs anymore, have a part of their jobs or have been retired or laid off or furloughed, or things have to change, and different people are buying different things and doing different things, and oh my God, how are we supposed to make decisions? So how can organizations, whether it's corporate or let's split them up, corporate and association, although they're going to have some convergence, how can large organizations that are looking to work through taking care of people through this time, how can we use the values thinking to do some of that?
Well, I think that we're at an unprecedented moment in history where we have the opportunity to not just recover, but rethink. We can come back into this and try and establish what we had before, or we can come back into this and say, let's do this in a way that was better than what we had before. We have the time right now. In many cases, our hands are going to be forced. There's not going to be some of the things that were before that were on the verge of failing or succeeding. They'll have changed. If nothing else, this has been an amazing accelerator of failure and success. So things will have changed, definitely. There was my First Nations friends, my Indigenous friends, talk about how you can't step into the same stream twice. So I think it's a very important lesson for us. There will be no going back to what it was before. It's inevitable we're going to be in some kind of new place. The river has moved on. So how do we want to do that? Do we want to do it using outdated ideas about who each other is? Do we want to use it a discriminatory approach to every conversation where we start by saying, well, women are like this and men are like that, and old people like this and boomers like that and millennials like this and Generation Z? I saw a study the other day that made my hair curl. And I don't have my.
I was going to say, wow.
So this was a study by some organization that I'm actually going to name because I think people should go check them out and just see if they can understand this. They're called the Center for Generational Kinetics.
Whatever that is.
Whatever that is. And they released a study about.
I sort of have a whirling dervish in my mind.
They released a study about Generation Z, and the headline on the study in the press release they sent out that I saw on LinkedIn, it said Generation Z wants their companies and brands to be fun, authentic, and good. I sat back and thought about that for a moment and went, well, that's funny because I want mine to be boring, I want them to lie to me, and I want them to be awful. So clearly I'm not a member of Generation Z, right? I can't believe these studies that keep coming out and trying to stereotype a particular generation with one broad paintbrush and asking them questions like, do you think environmental consciousness is important for corporations? Well, what are they going to say? No? Of course they're going to say yes. So then suddenly this giant exclamation point that environmentalism is huge with Generation Z. Well, it's huge with all of us. It's not just huge with Generation Z.
Well, and if it's not huge with all of us, we better get our ducks in a row because
it's the other pandemic,
yes.
Right, that needs to be addressed. Anyway, where was I going with this? We're talking about how can we use values as a way to understand who each other are and how we can recover and come out of COVID in a better place. I think fundamentally, at the very base level, every conversation about everything should start with what do the people who will be impacted by this particular decision, product, brand, service, whatever it is, what do they care about? What's important to them? And if we can start every conversation that way, which we can now because we have a database that allows us to do that, then I think the world can't help it but end up coming out of this in a much better place than we went into this from.
Right.
So I know it's tough for a lot of people right now, myself included. It's been a difficult 6 months, and who knows how much longer we're going to be here. But I think that in retrospect, when we look at this 10 years from now, this is going to be one of those moments in history where we've gone from being one thing into being another. And we need to recognize that right now. I don't think the people in the Middle Ages knew when they were entering the Renaissance. We're about to change from whatever that was to whatever this is. It's going to be that historic. It will be in the history books, this moment and this change that it's forced. Let's do it right. Let's do it based on what we care about and what was important to us as humans, and not an outdated system from thousands of years ago that we used to understand each other back when we had no other choice.
I think there's some things, that I think people are really missing right now. And I would, and I'm going to look at this through my events lens, which is things like live performance and arts. And, how does a connection to the arts, where does that play into some of the values that we might have?
Well, we interestingly did a study on people who are very interested in arts and culture, and we were able to figure out what their values are and what it is they're looking for. One of the core ones that came out was personal growth. That one of the reasons so many people are so addicted to going to see things live and going to look at art and wanting to watch the ballet and the symphony and the opera and the theater and the street performers and all those things that have been denied us for the last little while is because it makes them a better version of themselves tomorrow than they were today. They learn new things, they're challenged, and we get a hunger for that. People who are interested in personal growth, they have a hunger for that. The other really core value that came out of that study was that people people who are interested in arts and culture have a higher than normal interest and importance that they place on the value of relationships. So it's not just about going by themselves.
Shared experience.
It's about shared experiences. And I think maybe for the majority of us, because relationships comes at the top of the list when we look at national lists of what are the important values for different countries and different parts of the world.
We're going to talk about some of those, aren't we?
Relationships is always near the top. Right? So we all want to be with each other more than most other things. Family is one of the number ones. Relationships is one of the number ones. They kind of flip-flop depending on what part of the world we're looking at. But wanting to be with each other is just so fundamental to being human. And right now we're not allowed to. So we're missing.
Or we're not allowed to in ways that make any sense to us. I think that is for me, the biggest challenge as I look at, how do we move forward with events? Well, it's not fundamentally natural for us to sit. I think there's some really great things. I think sitting at a table of 3 instead of a table of 10, brilliant from a conversation and dialogue perspective. Like, please, let's never go back to a round of 10, but I've been on that drum for, a few years. So, but fundamentally, we're not set up to talk 6 feet away from each other with masks on where we can't see all of the emotions.
Kind of backwards. Or maybe 5.5.
We bubbled. We're okay. But yes, but that's also part of it, so it's like, someone said the other day, we have a very fabulous, we call it the partio. And someone said, oh, you've been having people over. And I was like, four maximum, yes, but very few people and never a lot of us, because that's what we can't do right now. When you go into, we've had a restaurant experience yesterday that has always been something we look forward to, but we went in, it was basically they squished all of our food into takeout containers and we're told that we could go and sit outside, but outside now there was all of these, there is now dogs in my restaurant and the garbage hadn't been changed, and it's like, wait a minute, we've just went from what used to be a really nice dining experience, and I will not call them out as tempting as it is, to something that is now kind of a subpar takeout experience.
I had this.
So if I wanted a subpar takeout experience, great, I would like my $8 takeaway sandwich and I can go, but that's not what just happened here. So I think that, and then it just comes back to that fundamental socializing, right? So it's, now we don't even feel comfortable socializing.
Absolutely. So. I had a very similar experience. I went to one of my favorite restaurants on the day they reopened when we hit phase 3 here in Vancouver, where we live. and I ordered a bowl of soup, and it's a fancy place. It's a $20 bowl of soup. It's not somewhere you go for lunch every day, but they had taken all of the.
And you've been waiting to go back there.
So waiting to go back there, and all of the reasons why you would pay $20 for a $2 bowl of soup had been taken away.
Yes.
It was rubber gloves and the thing and the temperature and nothing was allowed on the table. There was, and it felt. I actually wrote a blog about it, and I said it was like eating soup in the proctologist's waiting room. It felt so sterile and clinical.
Yeah.
And yes, they're following all the rules, but there are ways to do that where we can still meet the values of the people who are coming into our establishments, coming to our events, coming to our association gatherings.
Yeah.
We can do these things. We have to be creative, but tell me that the folks in your industry are anything but creative.
Exactly.
No,
and I think we're starting. We're starting to see some amazing examples of people being able to bring people together and for shared experiences of some 50 people who are they're having yoga experiences and educational learning experiences, and they are doing dining for 3 people at a round, so you can be maybe not exactly 6 feet, but far enough away that you can be comfortable eating. We've gone from buffets, which I don't necessarily love anyhow, to nice plated meals.
Yeah.
That in theory would cater to your, if you have specific dietary requirements, are easier to cater to because it's just coming directly to you. And you, with a group of 50, you can do a very nice, even if it's a distance, a high level of service, even if it's not a high touch service, because we don't want to be touching things as much. Absolutely, there's ways that we can do that.
No more twister parties. But I think that
I know, it's true.
I'm really excited about a fundraiser I'm going to in the next little while. I collect art, and so we end up going to all these black tie gala fundraisers, and most of them have been canceled. And this has been a really bad problem for most of these arts organizations, because this is their major fundraiser in the course of a year, is get everybody dressed up, throw a few drinks in them, get them to bid on some stuff. So there's one group called Arts Umbrella. They've decided that their their gala this year is going to be distributed. So there's going to be groups of 50 in multiple locations, and then the auction will be a live feed, so we can still all have one too many drinks and try and outbid each other on stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how they're going to handle the groups of 50 in all these smaller places, but so happy that someone sat back and went, well, we can't have 1,000 people together like we used to, but what we could do is we could split them all up and find a way to still make them feel like they're together around the auction portion of the evening. So smart.
Well, and it's also because what happens with, you buy a lot of art. So what are the values that get your competitive juices going when you're buying that art? What are the excellent? Yes.
Mostly vodka. I don't know. There's for me the buying of art at auctions is we only ever we don't go to a commercial auction. We'll only do it if it's a fundraiser for an event. Because otherwise you're just buying whatever they happen to have. Instead of, I know what I would like and I want a piece by so-and-so and they're represented at XYZ gallery, and so I go there when there's the next show and see which one I want, right? This is more about supporting the organization. So I guess the values for me that would be on display in an evening like that would be about about caring for others, service to others. I'm sure there's a little bit of status and a little bit of social climbing and a little bit of ambition involved in wanting to beat the next guy.
And in fact, we rely on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I want to be the big man who wins the thing. It's always depending on the level of drinks you have. I think your values which values are.
We also rely on that. There's a reason that you have a lot of wine poured at most fundraising galas. It's we want to lower people's inhibitions, make them a bit more competitive, and get people going. But you're right, many organizations rely on that, and missing that component is impacting fundamentally their ability to survive, because we've had these sort of rote ways of a combination of membership plus fundraising plus and that fundraising often ties back into some kind of a gala where you can see and be seen, where you get dressed up and where you go and compete. And now a lot of that's just been erased. It's not the same going and bidding on a digital silent auction at home by yourself.
Sure. We need to think about this in the context of events, though, because I think it's really important that people who are organizing events and putting together conferences understand that meeting and exceeding the rules and regulations around being safe and making sure that everyone is secure and that nobody ends up being sick are incredibly important. But even more important is to understand what the people who are coming to your event, what they really care about and what they value, so that we can make sure that those values, the volume on those is turned way up, and that we're able to meet and satisfy those values first. Meeting and satisfy the safety pieces, that has to come second.
Well, and the safety pieces are fundamentally going to be built in because now they have to be.
Yeah.
But it's the same as choosing a venue, setting up your, making your floor plan. Those are all elements that we already had to do. Now we're just adding on a layer.
Yeah.
And the venues are figuring out that layer. And all of the organizations like the American Hotel and Lodging Association,
Groups like that are figuring out those layers and working with healthcare organizations to do that. So we're getting those in there, people that we know who are now having those hotel experiences, where they're running it. A lot of the hotels are running 20 to 30% capacity, and in some places, Mexico is open.
Yeah.
But those hotels are open at 30% capacity. You actually have quite a pleasant experience at a 30% capacity when you travel there and you bring your family, and you do have to be in masks in public areas, but now you're sitting with your family and you're still in your bubble and you're having a very pleasant experience.
Sure.
Because now it actually feels a bit more luxury because you're not, fighting off the masses to go and do those things. So I think there is definitely benefits that are going to happen with it. And I think, I do want to talk about the reality that as we go back into whatever the next normal is, that we do need to be looking at environmentalism and climate change as something that's fundamentally something that we bring forward with us.
And we'll bring that up in
as
one
a
of the next
value.
episodes.
Yeah, it's important, right? So
Cool.
all of those things.
There we go. That's number 2.
All right.